Alright, so I've been seeing in the comments and online, people can't seem to decide who to pull for between Shinku and Iroi. So in this video, we're going to be going over their value for each and who I think you should pull for based on your individual account, and also who I think is the best universal pick overall for the patch. Obviously, if you're thinking waifu over meta, just pick whoever you like. Screw it, we'll go over who looks better too at the end, how about that? Now let's get into this thing. Now let's just get the obvious out of the way real quick right now, okay? Clearly, the devs want us to pull Shinku. That is the pushed character right now, and not just for like this patch. So far in NTE, the most pushed character that we've had so far, and they've also thrown in all this crazy animations and such. This reminds us of like Castoris, and all kinds of other crazy animations we've seen in other games. That's how like epic this is. But don't be fooled. This is a DPS character, and at the end of the day, it's really the supports most often that actually have the most value in these games because they can be utilized on a number of different teams and aren't as restricted. They also don't come around as often as the other DPS characters do, so they're more rare and have a lot of value just in that itself. Now, some games are exceptions to this, right? A game like NTE, for example, where DPS is king. Honestly, your main DPS unit is the most important part of your team there in that game, and you build around that. But NTE is a little bit different, and unfortunately, it's not super duper obvious like which is more important to players. It really is more account dependent or playstyle dependent, I feel like, because NTE isn't necessarily pushing the meta super duper hardcore. And for those that still haven't cleared the end game, most players aren't even at max level yet, so that makes a lot of sense, right? So the meta isn't necessarily super duper important right now. However, Neverness to Everness is a game that includes elemental reactions and Esper cycles, so if you care about that type of thing, it is important to at least pay some attention so that you at least set up your teams in a decent way. Which is why the main character has actually been one of the most important and powerful characters in the meta so far, because they create so many different synergies on all of these different teams. And Shinku and Iroi are actually two of the most important elements in the game, being Cosmos and Anima. They're very, very important for Blossoms or for Remora or for charge teams. Like, they're very, very meta relevant. Shinku being a powerhouse Cosmos DPS that I expect to land somewhere between maybe slot 1, 2, or 3 in the overall DPS slot for the 1.x story block. And Idoy being an anima healer / buffer that technically can bring value to anyone's account. Although Shinku is a Cosmos character and Cosmos is the best element in the game right now and only going to get better when she comes out, we still have cheese for the DPS slot right now, and most of us don't even have our cheese at A6 with the fully powered up weapon even yet. And so we don't really need Shinku, right? I guess technically you don't need any character in this game when the current level of the game is not necessarily that hard, but I guess Shinku is just something nice, I guess you could say, something to make the Cosmos element even more powerful, something to aid our main character in the sub DPS slot even more now, or Hattori even more now. They can synergize on the same team with another element, or even on 2 more elements and make a charge team. And yeah, that's definitely something to watch out for. Shinku is going to be able to work on Remora teams, on Blossom teams, on charge teams. 3 of the best things you could even have in the game right now. Again, we don't really need her to make any of these teams stronger. They're already very strong, but it just goes to show how much stronger the already strongest teams in the game are going to be when you add this character into the game, who may end up being the strongest DPS we've had so far, ending up on the already existing strongest teams we have. Of course, the Lacrimosa team's strong too, you know what I'm saying though. But some of you may have already picked up on what I'm getting to here, and maybe even made a comment about this. When you have the charge team and the Blossom teams as some of the strongest teams in the game, well, Shinku and Iroi are both characters on both of those teams, so you could just be going for both. But many of you probably clicked on the video because you're a little bit low on pulls right now and you're not sure if you can get 2, so you're kind of worried about which one matters to you the most because you're not sure how many pulls you're actually going to have by the end of Shinku's banner when Iroi finally comes around. But just don't forget, the game is very generous. There is no 50-50s, so I'm sure many of you who are a little bit worried right now are probably going to end up getting both of them anyway. But obviously, don't get duped by the gacha model. This is a gacha game at the end of the day. Even as generous as it is, you don't want to accidentally leave yourself too dry, because you don't even know what's coming in 1.3 yet, baby. But no, seriously, the best option ideally is obviously to get both. I think that goes without saying, right? But there are reasons for that. It's because they can both go on the same team. And if they both end up being like the best in slot for their role in the game, then they're going to end up being part of the best team. So definitely something you may want to consider, especially since Idoy is going to be the first premium buffer we have in the game that typically spells the best character overall in the game in a lot of these gachas. That's happened in most of the gachas that I've covered up to this point. And with Iroi being probably the best buffer we've had in the game so far, pairing next to and buffing the best DPS we've probably had in the game so far, yeah, this is going to end up being the best team we've had so far in the game. But I think if you can only choose one, Iroi is actually the best choice here because they can be universal to your account, buffing technically any one of the teams that you have. You're probably not necessarily going to go into an endgame domain that a Cosmos character like Shinku would not be good in. You're probably going to end up switching up the DPS to fit that properly, right? And you're going to end up potentially still using Idoy though on that team because she's still a very good buffer. And I didn't really go into this much yet, but Idoy is a healer, okay? And this game does lean more towards a casual audience. A healer is very, very valuable, especially early on in the game when a lot of players are still kind of getting used to the combat as they explore the world and whatnot, you know? Many players haven't even bothered with the end game yet at this point, so a healer could be great for an account like that, or a player who isn't necessarily a meta slave or something. She can even revive a downed character and then send them into her special regression state mode or whatever. That's like, dude, this character's kind of crazy. Yeah, sure, maybe she's not as hot as Shinku, or like the personality is maybe not your thing or whatever, but like at the end of the day, this is still a great character to pull, and I think is the most valuable character we've potentially had up to this point. Now, obviously, if you just want some nuts to butts, high-octane action, just go for Shinku. Okay, obviously, pull the crazy, flashy, insane-looking DPS, right? I think that's what most people here are gonna do, even if they have the knowledge of Idoy is the better character. I know Idoy is the better character. They're still gonna do it, you know what I mean? Like, everyone's been there before. So, really, you should just pull who you like. You know what I mean? I still see value in making a video like this, but considering the meta isn't really that important, and considering most players who still haven't completed endgame or even potentially attempted it, they're not even at max level yet. You know, I've heard from a lot of people they're waiting to be able to get to the max level and all that stuff so they can do it and just clear it with ease, right? So if that's not all that important, the game is catered more to casuals, and the game is not as hard to clear as a lot of these other gachas, then the whole waifu over meta, husbando over meta thing is more justifiable in this game than most other gachas. I struggle to think of a top gacha that's doing it better than NTE as far as waifu and husbando over meta is concerned, because you really can just pick whoever you want. So main mint until literally this game EOS's, because mint is the GOAT. But yeah, if you couldn't tell by this point, Idoy is technically the best choice for your account overall, but you may want to pick someone like Shinku if you're maybe like newer to the game or still trying to build teams that make sense to you. Not everybody played this game on day one, and not everybody grinded the game, so a lot of people are still building their teams and such, and so someone like Shinku might matter to you more because you feel like your support slots are already filled out. But again, Idoy is technically the best choice, but choose who you feel is more fun for you, to be honest. That's the point of the game. Fun. Don't make meta like take that away from you, okay? Now, as far as which character looks better, obviously that's personal. That's everybody's gonna pick something different, right? But I do feel like they fit completely different aesthetics and styles and personalities. So this is kind of a tougher one to pick, I'm not gonna lie. My immediate reaction is to pick Shinku. That's more my style. If you know anything about me, that's where I'm at, usually 100% of the time. But I'm not gonna lie, despite the fact that I'm not usually into the shy, timid types like Idoy, they usually just aren't my thing, like they just really aren't. Iroi does it. I'm not gonna lie. Iroi does it. Something's there. Something's there. Anyways, you guys let me know who you're more excited for, who you think you're gonna pull, and if you guys like this kind of stuff, consider leaving a like and subscribe. See you in the next one. Peace.